Alright guys, what's up? Today I want to talk about a rapper, kind of, not necessarily totally obscure, but I would say pretty well forgotten, and not necessarily unfairly, but he had a couple really dope songs, and that's what this is really about. So this is a guy named T.N.T, there's actually probably a couple rappers named T.N.T, but this particular one basically was down with Candyman, which is not necessarily a great sign right off the bat. But T.N.T first came out in the late 80s, down with, again, Candyman's posse, you know, producer Johnny J, who's a really talented producer, made good stuff. And so this would have been back like when Candyman was Disney PMD in a video I did before, and when he's, you know, like down with NWA and then the NWA cover and all that kind of stuff. So T.N.T was down with him. He put out like two 12 inches, basically, two 12 inches. And then he came out with this album on a major label right here, T.N.T, Mr. Dynamite. So, I mean, just looking at it, like, this is not a good sign, right? It looks kind of cornball. It looks kind of New Jack Swingy kind of stuff. This is 1990. This is on Pump Records, which is also not necessarily a good sign. I mean, they had actually a surprisingly kind of big roster. Kind of their biggest guys, I guess, were South Central Cartel and also their solo acts. They had guys like Lighter Shade of Brown. They had Jazzy Red. They had, remember the Naked Rabbit Dance? That guy. They had him. So a lot of not necessarily good stuff. The Chill Deal Boys. Toddy T's Comeback, you know, and Toddy T, you know, Batarang, and like that's classic West Coast stuff, but definitely one of those kind of comeback albums that, you know, very kind of pop and mainstream, but underground and not successful at the same time. Just one of those misguided old school comebacks that should never have happened, and that was sort of what their label specialized in. A lot of kind of stuff like that. So, you know, they had connections to good artists. You say, oh, okay, Navy's gonna be promising. But then they would steer them in the wrong direction, and that's absolutely what happened here with T.N.T. But there's no question why they did it, and it's understandable why they did it in a way, because you can look at T.N.T.'s career being pre and post Candyman's Knockin' Boots. So T.N.T.'s first record was in 1988 called Bustin' Out, and yes, it's another play on Rick James's Bustin' Out. Lots of rappers have done rap songs based on that. Dougie Fresh, you know, remember his big single Bustin' Out on Funk? Same thing, same riff. I mean, T.N.T's record's obviously different than Dougie Fresh's, but not in the sense that they're using big, like, they're not just sampling it a little bit. Like, it's almost a cover. It's one of those songs, you know, where they're using all the classic instrumentation and putting it into the thing. But still, it's pretty well produced. It's produced by Johnny J. And they have, you know, they use the right elements from the song and kind of mix it up and make it a little bit more hardcore hip-hop. T.N.T is a little bit edgier. That's really... So, okay, again, he was down with Candyman, so, okay, that's not a great sign. But T.N.T was definitely the more hardcore guy of the crew. Like, you know, if Candyman was Alcoholics, T.N.T was Xzibit. You know what I mean? So, but this is 1988 at the same time, so 80s, so not super hardcore. Definitely kind of riding the edge. It was pretty good. I've actually got it queued up, so here, we're just going to listen to a little bit just to give you an idea. So this is T.N.T's first single, Bustin' Out. Like, right away, you recognize all these samples, right? So... That's actually Candyman. So that's, you get the sense. So some really dope samples. So it's a pretty good record. The only knock on it really is that it's samples that have been used plenty times before and since. So I mean, it's kind of familiar and, you know, but you know, it's a good record. I recommend it. And you know, T.N.T, pretty solid for a 1988 rapper. Like, definitely not gonna, you know, take Rakim from the throne or anything like that, but enough to make a pretty dope record. And so that's who T.N.T was. Now that record's really just the past. It's kind of before what I'm talking about. I just talk about that to set it up. So now we're talking about Mr. Dynamite. And what's interesting here, basically, like its cover suggests, most of it is a pretty bad album, which I don't recommend. So why am I even talking about it? Because two songs on here are actually really pretty good, better than Bustin' Out even. And it's really clear why, again, when you think about the history and you look at it, his second single, but the first single that actually factors into this album, called Hotter Than Hell. One of the B-sides is called Rest in Peace. Those two songs are the really good ones. And as you can tell from the titles, like these are much more kind of hardcore. They're sample heavy. He's, again, T.N.T. isn't exactly like, Cool G rapper, Willie D or something, just kind of going off nuts. He's kind of more on the commercial end and all that kind of stuff, but definitely more kind of hardcore flow, hardcore beats. Sounds pretty good. He's not going to impress you with lyricism necessarily, but he makes a good record. And again, a large credit to that goes to Johnny J. But then, of course, this is 1989. The album is 1990. So as soon as that single comes out, 1990, Candyman blows up with Knockin' Boots and becomes a huge pop phenomenon. So that's when T.N.T. signs to Pump Records. Those first two 12 inches, not on Pump Records. They're independent. They're on King's Quality, which is the same label Candyman was on before he was signed. So boom, Candyman goes to, I forget what label it was, Columbia. T.N.T. goes to a smaller label because he was just down with Candyman. He didn't make Knockin' Boots after all. But he gets signed to Pump Records. So the whole rest of the album, pop songs, sappy love songs, bad, cheesy stuff, lots of synthesizer stuff, lots of love songs, lots of just everything you shouldn't do. Like just one bad decision stacked on top of another. So it's kind of a mess of an album. It's a pretty bad album. In some ways, it's not terrible. A lot of the production, not all of that. Johnny J does about half the album. And as you know from the Candyman albums, like if you're gonna have a pop rap 1990 kind of stuff, Johnny J was the guy to do it. Like Knockin' Boots sounds good. You can sit there and say, oh, I don't like the soft stuff. I don't like whatever. I don't like the record for lots of acceptable reasons, but it's well produced. Johnny J definitely made it sound good. And also several other songs on Candyman's first album and even his second album. And maybe to a little bit his third album. So he was a viable producer, and so some of that is on here, although not as much. And it's interesting. So they're definitely saying, okay, T.N.T., be our Candyman. You're down with Candyman. He made these pop hit records. Now it's your turn. In fact, the first single now from Pump Records, those first two records again were on King's Quality. That was the Bustin' Out and the Hard as Hell. Now on Pump Records, his first single features Candyman, and it's rapping about girls. Pure pop, little stories, sort of like Will Smith-like kind of stories about girls. And so that's his first single on Pump Records. In fact, that was actually another B-side on his 1989 King's Quality record. But Pump re-released it with just that record and dropping Hard as Hell and Rest in Peace, because that was not the T.N.T. that they wanted. And then his next single, All Night Long, is a really kind of syrupy love song with, like girls singing on the hook and singing throughout the whole song in the background and everything. And he's doing these kind of really cheesy love raps. What's interesting is he's still kind of the harder edge guy compared to Candyman. Like, yeah, he has love songs and rapping about girls, but at the same time he has songs calling them whores and stuff like that, which, Candyman, wouldn't do and was smart enough not to do. So this is still a little bit more street edge guy to it, but at the same time, like, really slow, kind of like, not even R&B, like beyond it in times of like, although he did have lots of R&B singers and stuff, not known or established R&B singers, but just, like studio singers on hooks and stuff like that. So it's kind of a mess of an album. But this album does feature those two really dope songs, Hard as Hell and Rest in Peace, which I'm going to play samples of, and you're going to hear, oh, okay, these are actually good songs, and songs you probably want to own. That 12-inch now is like hard to find because King's Quality Record was a small label, pretty obscure, so, you're going to have to pay a lot for it. Although it has a really cool picture cover, and maybe I'll kind of stick that up there. But hard to find, hard to track down. Busting Out, not little, also kind of hard to find. Again, unless you're willing to pay like $100 for it. But this album, because it's on Pump Records, which is a major label, and not a success, so wide distribution, not a lot of sales, so you can get it anywhere. You can get it on Amazon for like a penny. It's one of those kinds of albums. And you can get it on CD, cassette, vinyl, whatever. So, to get those songs, the way to do it, the easy way to do it, is to get the album. It might be cooler than the 12-inch because it's just the three songs, the two good songs featured prominently, and it has a Candyman cameo if you want that. Not that the whole album is like 100% garbage besides those two songs. Like I said, Johnny J did get some good production. The next best song on the album is a duet with Jazzy Red, who was another Pump Records guy. He was another old school guy. Like he had, he was cool at first because like he was on the Mixmaster Spade record, which boom, that just cements you. And then his first independent 12-inch, like that was pretty good. It was pretty fun. But right away, even then, like you knew you know, like, okay, this is a fun record, but he's not a great rapper. You know what I mean? Like, it's a cool record. I would recommend getting Jazzy Red's first single. Like, it's worth having. It's good. But again, you know, definitely not coming from the line of Casanova and Melly Mel and Kool Moe Dee. Like, this is definitely coming from more the kind of pop kind of, you know, hey, when everybody got into the hip hop scene and there was no real barrier to entry. So guys who could rap could do it, and guys who couldn't rap did it, and audiences weren't even necessarily sophisticated enough to really draw the distinction. I wouldn't say Jazzy Red couldn't rap. That's going too far. But again, he's not like a great lyrical monster guy. But he has kind of fast-paced, interesting duet with T.N.T. on this album, so that's kind of interesting. T actually comes on here, but only to write and produce. And they're 2 love songs. He doesn't actually lend any vocals to it, so it's just interesting to see his name in the credits. And you know, there's a couple more Johnny J productions. Not even all of those are necessarily all that amazing. Like, I definitely say like Johnny J is a talented producer, even when he's doing pop stuff. But some of his stuff on here is pretty skippable anyway. And then like a guy named Charlie Mack does some production. T.N.T. himself does some production or a lot of co-production. So, you know, most of the album really pretty forgettable. Probably listen to it once and be like, put it away. But those 2 songs, really dope. You're going to go back to those, I would say, over and over again. I mean, more so maybe back in the day. Like, if you bought this album in 1990, like, you probably would have played it out. Now, because there's just so much good hip-hop in history to go through. Like, if you're younger, like, if you're just discovering T.N.T. now, I don't know if you're really going to play it out that much. But definitely good, you know, good solid songs worth having a collection. So you can get the album. And like I said, or you can find the 12-inch if you can, because that's the 12-inch to have. And that's basically it for T.N.T.'s career. You know, Candyman blew up and had hits. This guy, he had his pop singles on Pump Records, but none of them blew. Or they blew, they just didn't blow up. So that was pretty much it for him. When Johnny J came out with his solo album, or, you know, like his producer album, so every song features a bunch of guest artists, that kind of thing. After he kind of split from Candyman, T.N.T. is on one of the songs on there, and that was like 94, I want to say. And that's like the last and only other appearance by T.N.T., which is kind of a shame. But again, like, he was better, he's more, you know, more kind of the hardcore street guy than Candyman, but he still wasn't like an amazing MC. So I'm not like, oh my god, we really lost a natural treasure from T.N.T. But his early records, his King's Quality stuff, are dope and shouldn't be slept on. His Pump Record stuff, you know, except for the crossover, can be completely slept on. But so he had promise, he did some good work. Johnny J did some good work. Worth checking out. So I'm going to play some clips of it now. So this is T.N.T. I think we'll start out with Harder Than Hell, which is okay. And then we'll go to Rest in Peace, which is even better. And then maybe I'll even play a few clips from his album just to give you some of the contrast of what the other stuff was. But really, those are the 2 songs.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Serving like a Union Station. And by the way, I'm on the top of the nation with the lyrics that ring like school bells. They'll let you know that I'm hotter than hell. Suckers, I serve them by the dozen. Call me Michael, cause I cook them like an oven. Hot, but you never see me sweat. Fast, like a Concorde jet. Royal, I am a king, so call me sire. I'm not a dragon, but I'm spitting out fire. Dynamite, I am explosive, it's gonna be the nation top, abbreviated as T.N.T. Cali Hop. We have them to lie like Transformers. We're more than meets the eye, literature. This moves a level higher, now I'm hotter than hell, just like a forest fire. I'm invincible, yeah, just like a lion. You cannot hang, so you need to stop trying. All than me, T.N.T. try to defeat me, knowing it's impossible, cause I'm unstoppable. Pay attention, lend me your ear for a while, so I can get this dope track Cali Hop style. Take a guess, T.N.T. and solo from not a pair. To hell with Freddy, I'm your worst nightmare. Vigilante of the worst suckers, I am the scariest. See you innocent taste of the Cali Hop test. You better run fast before it comes past, and let you feel the rise of my foot up your ass. When rhyming like this, suckers get nervous. They think they can hate, but they know they'll get served. But the point that I'm making is they need to stop trying to diss, cause they know that they can't fuck with this. Rip you up like plastic, stretch you like elastic. Daily at awesome, see through you like acid. Hitting, I'm never quitting, cause it's drastic. Your style is so old, it's considered a fucking classic. This is sweet, you can't compete, step off my meat. You got visa, may you rest in peace. I advise you run as I begun. Rest in peace, verse 2, part 1. You want a crunch punk, eat this for lunch. around TKOs, no rematch. This is combat. I'm the sole survivor. You're squeaking like a mouse. I'm more like a tiger. T.N.T. gets respect, my friend, cause I'm the CHAMPION champion. Not a loser, but a winner, boy. I'm the veteran. You're the beginner. My advice is come complete. You best retreat. And if you don't sucker, you'll rest in peace. Didn't think I had it in me. I know you want more. Backboxing, man, you guessed the rip force. Ooh, girl, I wanna tell you just how I've been feeling about ya since I met ya. I bet ya didn't know it was like that. Now did ya? I'm all grown up and I'm not here to kid ya, cause I've been searching the whole world over for a girl like you. And now I'm through searching, cause now I found you after searching the whole world. And all I wanna ask ya, well, all I wanna ask ya is, what if I asked you to marry me and become Mrs. T.N.T? Huh? If I did, would you be willing to take the risk?
Yeah, right. But what if?
What if we live together? What if we had a family? What if we had his and her roles? I wonder how it could be. What if, no, say for instance that we went to the movies, then saw a movie that moved me, kinda like a Harlequin romance. I better yet at a wedding, one-on-one in a slow dance. Eternally I've waited for a woman so true.
What if we went to a movie and we saw a movie that moved me? That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not even this in the fact that he's doing a love song. Like, that's just bad rapping.
Give me your hand as I persist to hold it tightly. Then click off the lights, cause we can spend the night all night. Pop in a midnight slow jam, chillin'. Give you a peck, then caress your neck. Gently rub your back as we sit more wet. And then you whisper, you need me as we start to work a hell of a sweat. You feel so good and taste so sweet. Just close your eyes and let me rock you to sleep.
By the way, I don't mean to come off like I hate R&B or R&B is bad or anything like that. R&B is a genre of music, it'd be great, but this, you know, is not Sam Cooke.
Little Sally Walker.
Some people don't like the way
Don't like what?
Sally walk.
Yo, that's cool. But we like the way she ride. Let me tell you a story. We're looking at my glossy about Sally and the Cali Hot Posse. She looked good, but then again, by the foliage, I could tell this girl had a lot of mileage. Candyman was the first in line. The perfect girl for him was too hard to find, cause every girl seems to leave him with a frown. She's either too fat, too short, or she's about to leave town. So he decided to release some straight at a pep rally. That's when Candyman finally met Sally.
I met the perfect type of girl. She ain't nothing but a hottie. Tall, smart, with a hell of
Wait a
a
minute.
body.
Hold up. I think I know this girl.
Stop lying. She ain't from this town.
Yo, I think she's lying, so he showed me a photo to prove it was a lie. Come to find out, this girl was riding T-Fly. Just goes to show you girls are all the same. Cause all they want is your fortune and fame. So next time, forget about your pride. You just take them for the ride.